Well, today we are talking about a new initiative that was recently launched by Redeeming Our Communities and Welcome Church called Finding the Peace. And I'm here with Debra Green, OBE, the founder and director of Redeeming Our Communities, here to tell us all about it. Hello, Deborah. How are you?
Hi, Nathan. Thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, it's great to have you joining me. And really interested in hearing about this new initiative because it's launched basically as a response to a lot of the unrest we've seen here in the UK, isn't it? Lots of the riots.
Yes. Yes. So going back to around about the 29th of July, when the awful events unfolded in Southport and children lost their lives to victims of knife crime, we then unfortunately saw on top of that tragedy, the far right and others got involved with rioting and disorder and unrest in that community. And then that seemed to spill over into many other communities as well. So what we've really seen is the worst rioting, violence and disorder since 2011. It's affected more than 40 different communities across the UK. And we, as Redeeming Our Communities, we felt that we should respond to this. And as we were just thinking that through, our friends at Welcome Churches got in contact with us and said, how would it look like if the two charities got together and formed a collaboration? It's always better when you're working with others. You can achieve far more when two charities work together. And they came together with us to offer to the communities that have been most affected by the riots. We could come alongside those communities and do a whole host of events, which I can tell you about. But as we started talking, Stewardship Services also became partners with us and offered to work alongside us in the launch of this campaign, Finding the Peace. So the logo was quickly designed last week. We also then launched the campaign, and we started to hear about what communities are going through and started to quickly put together a whole list of activities um, for what we can do together to heal and restore communities.
Awesome. So I see that you've seen a need and you've collaborated with a number of charities to meet that need and to support communities, which is great. And would you mind telling us a little bit, just for those who might not know, what is Redeeming Our Communities all about?
Well, Redeeming Our Communities, we are a community engagement charity because unfortunately, people coming together to collaborate doesn't just happen naturally. You have to be intentional about it. You have to physically gather to what you do and help them to listen and help them to get to know one another. And we've done 300 of the rock conversations across the UK in lots of different types of communities. We were in near Derby City Centre just recently doing a rock conversation. And in the room, people are saying things like, well, we've never met. I've heard about this new initiative, Men in Sheds, say, for example, but we've never met them before. So what's happening is people are not really getting to know one another and they're not really sharing or collaborating across ideas. So we do that. We do that in lots of different communities. And we also then have developed some mentoring projects. We've got a restorative justice project. We've got health crisis, mental health hubs that are starting up in lots of different communities. So new ideas have emerged as we've been bringing communities together.
Well, that's amazing. And I see, I guess Finding the Peace is just one of many initiatives that you've launched to help bring communities together. I mean, as you say, it's not easy, is it? Trying to bring communities together. It's easy enough to launch a project, but how do you get people to get involved? How do you make it, how do you get people to collaborate? That's quite tricky, isn't it?
Well, when people start to share a concern, um, like, for example, the riots, it's really brought people out in solidarity. People don't want those kinds of, most people don't want those kinds of things happening in our communities, where property is being destroyed through to the loss of life, and many police officers have been injured. That is just such a negative thing to be happening in any community, with violence and hatred towards different people groups. So we do feel that bringing communities together is even more important. And one of the things we want to do as Finding the Peace initiative is to launch some listening exercises within our communities, so that we can listen to maybe why people feel disenfranchised, but we're going to do it in a constructive way rather than rioting. We also want to launch some friendship festivals, so that we can promote people being friendly towards one another and showing friendship towards people that come from a different background to ourselves. So just because they've got a different colour skin, or they may have a different religion, or they might have a different viewpoint, those are the kinds of tension points that happen between people groups. We want to bring friendship festivals together, so that people can get to know one another and realise what's good about that other person's culture. What can we celebrate, and how can we take down those points of division?
Mm, that's fantastic. And I suppose, like you say, in many cases, a lot of these problems aren't solved because we don't necessarily listen. And so finding the peace, like you say, is that basically it's getting people together and trying to work out, okay, what is the problem? Because I suppose a lot of time, lots of problems occur because we don't actually give people the opportunity to say, well, what's wrong? Why are you upset? And is that the purpose of this?
Yeah, so um the first base really is about trying to heal some of the tensions that exist between people, because we haven't listened, because we've been ignorant really of what it's like to walk in that other person's shoes. But I think there we need to then take it on into what can we constructively do together? Can we run a project together that addresses something in the community? So in the aftermath of the riots, people will have seen the whole community coming out to help repair damage that's been done to somebody's property. Some of the mosques, for example, that were damaged in the aftermath of the riots. And then the community came out to clean up the mess, if you like, and help rebuild what has been broken. But I think we then need to help rebuild each other's lives. It's not just about physical structures, it's about, do we know one another? What can we do to work together? How can we really begin to understand what our prejudices are? And how do we begin to overcome those prejudices? Because we've all got prejudice. We all need to really spend time self-reflection of what makes me angry when somebody does something in the community which I don't like, or my road rage because somebody's cut me up in the car. So we need to think about ourselves, self-reflection. How do we get involved with that? And then we hopefully build some projects which gives people a relational opportunity to work together.
That's great. I suppose a lot of the time, is it basically so we bring people together and just give them the opportunity to explain why they're upset, and then basically go on to work out, okay, how can we solve this problem, and therefore find the peace in their communities? Because, like you say, it's not just physical things are being broken; it's also relationships. They need to be rebuilt. Trust needs to be rebuilt in many cases.
Yeah, trust needs to be rebuilt. And we have to get to know one another, because it could well be that a group of people that have been prejudiced toward another group of people, for example, if they got to know one another, they might find that they have a lot of shared interest. Sport, for example, And those kinds of shared interest is what brings people together around a meaningful activity. So that's why we want to do things like the friendship festivals, but we also want to do projects where people who've got a shared interest can work together on something, and that then brings the barriers down between them as they're working together.
Yeah, and we've seen so many times sport, for example, does bring people together. We saw it at the Olympics, didn't we? People come together because they share an interest in a particular sport or a particular type of athletics, and it does bring people together. So, what other sort of things might people have as a shared interest?
Well, we find things like art and things of, art is one of the things a little bit like sport, where people are interested in, say, theatre or drama, or they're interested in visual arts, or they're interested in, what could a community look like? They want to design something to make, that community, to get across their message. So art could be a very unifying thing as well. Or it could be around a theme, like, for example, we were interested in how to address the issue of homelessness, or the issue of the cost of living crisis, or the issue of youth antisocial behaviour. So there's those things like art and sports which can bring people together, but also problem solving around some of those other social issues.
Yeah, that's it's great actually because I suppose things like sports or arts or perhaps sort of problem solving a particular problem, they allow people to put aside their differences and work towards a common goal or a common interest.
Yes, that's right. So we've seen that, for example, when we did the work that we did in Reading with Thames Valley, um, we did a arts competition for young people where we said, what would you like your community to look like in 3 years from now? But they had to draw, they had to make a graphic, or they had to make a piece of art which got across their view. And it was so successful, that competition, that Reading University agreed to put the winning art entries on a mural on the outside wall of the university.
Wow.
Incredible. But also because the university wanted to attract young people to come to the university, and they really wanted to attract the types of young people who don't see themselves as academic. They wanted to attract young people who would never see themselves as going to university. And because of the art competition, a lot of the young people who were involved in the art competition were not the sorts of young people who had an aspiration to go to university, ended up going down to the university to see their artwork, and then meeting some of the staff and meeting some of the other students. And it's really brought a bridge between the community and the university. And so it's those kinds of ideas that we want to explore.
Awesome. Well, because that would definitely find the peace because it's building those bridges, like you say, building that trust and opening doors, really. It's providing an opportunity for people to go somewhere they maybe weren't comfortable going before, or perhaps wouldn't have been trustworthy enough to go before.
Yeah, and maybe lack of confidence, sometimes lack of our self-esteem, or not really believing that we could have an opportunity. There's a lot of young people today who don't feel they've been given that same equality of opportunity as others. And we know that a lot of those young people are being attracted to go into, to maybe join one of these gangs, either, the far right gangs, or things like, the county lines, attracting young people to come and join them because the young people don't feel like they have a voice. So giving people a voice is a really powerful thing to do.
That's a good point, mate. Giving people a voice. I suppose a lot of these projects will give them a voice, and it will give them something to work toward. A lot of the time, I guess a lot of these problems could easily be resolved if people were just allowed to maybe not feel so marginalized, and perhaps were given the opportunity to pursue what they enjoy.
Yeah, that's right. And I was on a call the other day with Northern Ireland, and that's been an area which has experienced a lot of these kinds of um, antagonistic groups toward each other, like the riots, but it's been going on for decades. People that don't agree, who are very angry about their lack of agreement toward one another. And one of the people on the call was saying that many of the communities who've been at the centre of this anger and rioting is because they feel forgotten. They feel that they've been overlooked. They feel that their voice hasn't been heard. So it's right through from young people who might feel like that, through to communities who feel like that. We haven't had a voice, we haven't been heard, we have been overlooked. There isn't equality in the UK, much as we'd like to say there is. There are lots of communities who have less resource than other communities. There are lots of people groups that have less, fewer resources. And that's what sort of causes this anger and disenfranchisement. So really, we want to get to the root of that and say, how can it be that we can heal some of these rifts, but also that communities don't feel forgotten, that communities feel that they are being heard.
Mm. So I'm just wondering, how could, for example, any person listening, how could we get involved in this initiative?
Well, if people look up Finding the Peace, it's on the Stewardship Services website. They can find out all about it there, or they can come to Redeeming Our Communities, which is rock.uk.com, or they can go to welcomechurches.org. So you can actually find out about it in 3 different places, which is great. So either at Redeeming Our Communities, at Welcome Churches, or at Stewardship Services. We've shared how people can get involved, how people could donate to the campaign, which is really important because without the donations, we can't go to help those particular communities, because obviously it's going to cost something to bring about that reconciliation and rebuilding. So people can go to Rock, Welcome Churches, or Stewardship Services.
Awesome. And it's great that this, I suppose, in a way, it allows people to pool resources, and then allow, as you say, for these resources to then be more evenly distributed, more fairly distributed.
Yes, that's right, because most of the communities which have been really adversely affected, over 40 communities, many of those communities haven't got the resource to do the rebuilding, either the physical rebuilding or the more relational building. And we want to go and offer them these resources that we have as Rock and Welcome Churches. And that costs money. So we are asking people to donate, but also we're reaching out to communities that might want us to come. They might have a plan of what they'd like to do, but they just need a little bit of help.
Mm, absolutely. Oh, that's fantastic. So rock.uk.com. Also,
Yes.
I got that right, didn't I?
Yeah, rock.uk.com. Yeah, that you
Oh,
did it because you did it without the www dot. That was great.
thank you.
Welcomechurches.org
Yeah.
and Stewardship Services. I should know off the top of my head, but I don't. But I'm just going to look it up. Stewardshipservice.org.uk. So any combination of those will work.
Awesome. Yeah. So that's great. Thanks so much, Deborah, for telling us about this initiative and for giving us an idea of how it works and how we can get involved.
Yeah, thank you. And a happy birthday to Pure 24/7 Radio as well. I believe it's your first birthday
It is.
around that now. So happy birthday to all of you, and hope you do go from strength to strength.
Thanks so much, Deborah. It's great to speak to you.
All right. Thanks then, Nathan.
Did you know Pure 24/7 Radio has a shop? Well, we do. You can buy merchandise while supporting the work that we do here. Simply head over to www.pure247radio.org/shop. That's www.pure247radio.org/shop.